Far away from Earth, in a corner of the universe that no human eye had ever seen, there was a peaceful world called Virelia. It was a planet covered with shining crystal forests, floating lakes, and cities that glowed softly in the night. The Virelians who lived there were gentle beings. Their skin shimmered like silver glass, and their eyes reflected light in many colors. They never fought wars, never built weapons, and never imagined that one day they might need them. They believed the universe was full of peace, just like their world. But peace is fragile, and one day it began to break. The sky over Virelia darkened with strange shadows. Great black ships appeared, slicing through the clouds like blades. The invaders were called the Carthax, a cruel and powerful species that lived only for conquest. They had no mercy, no kindness, and no sense of beauty. Wherever they went, they destroyed everything and took whatever they wanted. To them, the weak existed only to serve or die. The Virelians tried to speak to them to offer peace, but the Carthax answered with fire. Cities burned, towers of crystal fell and melted. The Virelians ran for their lives, but they had no weapons, no armies, and no strategy for war. For the first time in their long history, fear ruled their hearts. Parents hid their children underground. Scientists who once studied stars now searched for places to hide. The world that once sang with harmony was filled with screams. In their desperation, the leaders of Virelia gathered in their last safe city, buried under the glowing sea of Auralis. There, in an ancient hall made of living glass, they held a meeting that would decide the future of their species. The oldest among them, a being named Siral, spoke softly, his voice trembling like wind through reeds. "We have called to every world we know. None have answered. If we do nothing, we will vanish. Perhaps there are others out there beyond what we see." The room fell silent. The idea was risky, almost hopeless. The stars were countless, and sending a message into the void was like whispering into a hurricane. But Siral believed that even the faintest voice could reach someone. Somewhere, the scientists began building a massive transmitter using the energy from Virelia's twin moons. They poured all their hope, knowledge, and fear into one signal. A message that said, "Help us. We are dying." For weeks they worked without rest. Many of them never saw their families again, as the Carthax were drawing closer each day. Finally, on a night when the moons aligned perfectly, they activated the signal. A beam of blue light shot into the sky and spread across space, carrying their plea farther than they could ever imagine. The scientists cried as they watched it leave, because they knew it might be the last thing their people ever did. The message traveled through endless darkness, passing dead worlds and silent suns. It crossed frozen galaxies and storms of radiation. It took years, but it never stopped. The Virelians didn't know it, but the light kept moving faster and faster, until it reached a small blue planet orbiting an ordinary yellow star, a planet called Earth. On Earth, it was an ordinary day. People were busy with their lives, working, laughing, fighting, dreaming, never imagining that someone far away was crying for help. But high in a desert observatory, a group of scientists working for SETI, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, noticed something unusual. Their radio telescope picked up a strange signal, unlike any they had ever seen. It wasn't random static or cosmic noise. It had structure. It had rhythm. It had meaning. At first, they thought it was an error, but when they ran the data again, the pattern remained. One of the scientists, Dr. Elena Carter, stayed up all night staring at the screen. The message repeated every 33 minutes, pulsing like a heartbeat. She called her team back, and together they worked for days trying to decode it. Slowly, words began to appear. The translation wasn't perfect, but one sentence stood out clearly. "We are not of your world." We asked for help. News spread fast. Governments were informed, and soon the entire world knew that humanity had received a message from aliens. People were shocked, afraid, and amazed. Some said it was a trick or a hoax. Others believed it was a sign of hope. Religious leaders called it divine proof that humanity was not alone. Children looked up at the stars, wondering who was calling. But while Earth argued and debated, the Virelians waited. On their dying planet, the message had been sent, but no answer came. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. The Carthax had destroyed most of the cities. The beautiful crystal forests were gone, turned into ash and black dust. Siral and the few survivors watched from their underground shelters as the sky burned red. They didn't know if their message had ever been received. Still, they didn't lose all hope. Every night they looked up through cracks in the ground at the glowing stars and whispered prayers into the dark. Someone will come, they told their children. Someone will hear us. But deep inside they feared that they were truly alone. Meanwhile on Earth, world leaders met in secret. The signal had come from 42,000 light-years away. To send a reply would take thousands of years by ordinary radio waves. But new experimental technologies, based on quantum entanglement, offered a chance to answer instantly. Some said humanity should ignore the call. We have enough problems on our own planet, they argued. Others said, if we don't answer, who will? For humanity, it was a turning point. All their wars, divisions, and greed suddenly seemed small compared to the vastness of space. Dr. Carter stood before the United Nations and said, if there are people out there asking for help, then we have a moral duty to respond. We must show them what it means to be human. And so the world decided to act. Scientists, engineers, and explorers began working together on something humanity had never done before. A mission beyond the stars. A journey to reach those who had called for help. The first step would be decoding the full message and locating its exact origin. The data showed it came from a region near the edge of the galaxy, a place filled with radiation and chaos, a place no human probe had ever gone. While Earth prepared, the Varelians faced their final days. The Carthax were closing in on the last city. The air was thick with smoke, and the oceans boiled with heat from falling debris. Cyril stood on a cliff overlooking the ruined land, his heart heavy. He whispered to the wind, if anyone can hear us, please, hurry. And somewhere, light years away, a group of humans looked up at the same stars, their hearts filled with determination. They didn't know who had sent the message or what danger awaited them, but they knew one thing for sure. Someone out there was afraid, and Earth was going to help. As the night fell on both worlds, two civilizations, one ancient and fragile, the other young and daring, became connected by a single thread of hope. The Varelians' cry had crossed the impossible distance between them, and though neither side could see it yet, that moment marked the beginning of something that would change the galaxy forever. The universe, which had been silent for so long, had finally spoken. And humanity, the children of a dangerous world, had heard its call. On Earth, the discovery of the alien signal changed everything. The news spread like wildfire. Newspapers, television channels, and social media all screamed with the same question. Are we alone in the universe? For the first time in history, people around the world stopped fighting about politics, money, or religion. Everyone looked up at the sky with wonder and fear. Somewhere out there, someone had asked for help, and humanity had heard it. In a laboratory in California, Dr. Elena Carter and her team continued decoding the alien message. The signal was filled with complex symbols and strange music-like tones. It took months of careful study, but slowly the meaning began to make sense. The message wasn't just words, it contained pictures, star maps, and sounds. They showed a world of shining cities, peaceful creatures, and skies full of light. But then the message changed. The pictures became dark. Fires, destruction, and sorrow filled the images. The last part was simple and heartbreaking. We are under attack. Please help us. We don't have time. The scientists sat in silence. It was no longer just a discovery. It was a cry for survival. Somewhere far away, an entire species was dying. When the United Nations received the full translation, the room was filled with tension. Every nation had a different opinion. Some said helping was impossible. The distance was too great, the risk too high. Others argued that Earth should not get involved in a war between alien races. But there were those who believed humanity had a duty. If we can save even one world, said Dr. Carter, then our existence means something greater. Finally, after months of debate, a decision was made. Humanity would respond. A massive international project was formed, Project Aegis. It was the largest cooperation in human history. Scientists from every continent joined together. Space agencies merged their resources. Soldiers, engineers, and doctors volunteered, knowing they might never return. The first goal of Project Aegis was communication, using quantum entanglement technology, a method that allowed instant data transfer across space. Scientists sent a reply to the Varelian signal. It said, "We have received your message. We are preparing to come. Hold on." The message traveled instantly across the stars, but there was no way to know if it reached them. Still, it was enough to give people hope. Construction began on the greatest spacecraft ever built. It was named the Horizon Arc, a massive interstellar ship powered by fusion drives and protected by a new kind of energy shield. Every nation contributed something: materials, funding, and people. Engineers designed artificial gravity systems, while biologists created food that could last for decades. The best pilots and explorers from all corners of the Earth were chosen for the mission. The training was intense. The crew learned to live in zero gravity, to fight fires in space, and to handle unknown environments. They were taught alien biology, language theory, and psychology, anything that might help them understand and communicate with the beings who had called for help. There were 300 people on board: scientists, doctors, engineers, and soldiers. They were united by one goal: to reach the Varelians and save them. But not everyone supported the mission. Some groups on Earth protested. They said humanity was not ready to meet aliens, that it could bring danger. What if this is a trap? They asked. What if the ones who sent the signal are the invaders themselves? Others feared that humanity's violent history would make them look like monsters in the eyes of peaceful beings. There were arguments, conspiracies, and fear. But despite everything, the project continued. As the Horizon Arc neared completion, the crew prepared for departure. Families gathered at the launch site to say goodbye. Mothers hugged their children tightly, knowing they might never see them again. The world watched live as the ship stood ready on the launch pad, its massive engines glowing with light. Dr. Carter, now the mission's chief scientist, gave a speech before takeoff. Today, she said, we do not go to conquer. We go to protect. We go to answer a call that no one else could hear. When the countdown began, the world held its breath. Flames roared beneath the ship as it rose into the sky, faster and faster, until it became a bright star disappearing into the blackness of space. Millions of people on Earth cried, cheered, and prayed all at once. Humanity had taken its first true step into the unknown, not for exploration or power, but to save another world. Months passed as the ship traveled at near light speed through the endless void. Inside the Horizon Arc, life was both strange and beautiful. The crew lived under artificial sunlight and worked in shifts. They studied the alien data, built plans for landing, and ran constant safety checks. Some spent their free hours looking out of the observation deck, staring at stars that looked close enough to touch. In the quiet of space, they felt both small and infinite. During the journey, strange signals appeared on their scanners. Unknown readings, flickers of energy. Sometimes crew members thought they heard faint whispers in the radio, like echoes of voices. It reminded them that they were not alone in the universe. Whether those were ghosts of old transmissions or something else, no one could say. But every mystery made their determination stronger. Back on Earth, humanity watched their progress through delayed reports. Schools taught children about the mission. People built statues of the Horizon Arc. The ship had become a symbol of hope, unity, and courage. For the first time, humanity felt truly connected as one species. Wars slowed. Nations cooperated. It was as if the message from the stars had reminded people what really mattered. After a long voyage, the Horizon Arc finally approached the region of space where the Varelian signal had originated. The crew was nervous. The stars here looked different, dimmer, surrounded by swirling clouds of cosmic dust. The navigation systems showed debris and wreckage floating in the dark. It was the remains of battles fought long ago. Dr. Carter stared at the view and whispered, "They were right. Something terrible happened here." The further they went, the more evidence they found. Broken ships, burned satellites, and fragments of unknown technology. It became clear that this was not just a peaceful civilization in trouble. This was a war zone. The crew prepared for anything. The soldiers checked their weapons, the engineers reinforced the shields, and the pilots adjusted course toward a faint energy reading ahead. When the Varelian system finally appeared, everyone fell silent. The once beautiful planet was now a scarred world. The green glow of its forests was gone. The oceans were dark and steaming. Huge craters covered the land, and strange black ships hovered above the surface like predators waiting to strike. The Varelian cities were destroyed. Their towers melted into twisted metal. Dr. Carter felt tears fill her eyes. "We're too late," she whispered. But then a weak signal appeared on their screens, a familiar pattern. It was the same heartbeat-like rhythm that had first reached Earth. Someone was still alive. "Follow it," said Captain Reyes, the mission leader. The ship descended slowly through the smoke-filled atmosphere. Lightning flashed across the sky and debris rained from orbit. Every alarm in the control room screamed warnings, but they pressed on. The humans had come too far to turn back. As they broke through the clouds, they saw what was left of a Varelian city. Half buried in the ground, glowing faintly, was a massive dome, the source of the signal. The crew landed near it wearing protective suits. When the airlock opened, they stepped onto alien soil for the first time. The ground was hot and cracked, the wind heavy with ash. In the distance, shapes moved, tall, thin creatures with shimmering skin. The humans froze. The Varelians had found them first. One of the alien figures raised its hand slowly, trembling as if afraid. Then in a voice that sounded like music through static, it spoke the same words that had started it all. "Help us." In that moment, every doubt vanished. The mission had succeeded. They had found those who called for help. But what they didn't know yet was that the rest of the galaxy already feared humanity. The news of Earth's approach had spread among the stars. To most species, humans were not heroes. They were Deathworlders, creatures from a violent planet strong enough to survive anything. The Varelians had called for saviors, but what they had summoned were the most dangerous beings the universe had ever known. Still, none of that mattered now. Standing face to face, two species looked at each other in silence, one broken by war, the other forged by struggle. Their meeting was the beginning of a new story, one that would change both worlds forever. The air on Varelia was heavy with smoke and dust when the humans arrived. The horizon arc hovered above the planet's surface like a silver giant, casting a long shadow over the ruins below. From orbit, the world looked dead, its oceans black, its skies burning orange, but inside the wreckage, life still clung to hope. The Varelians, weak and frightened, had hidden underground in glowing shelters made of crystal and energy. For months, they had survived on recycled air and the last of their supplies. When they saw the human ship in the sky, many believed it was another Carthax invasion. They trembled, whispering prayers to their fading gods. Captain Reyes and Dr. Carter led the first landing team. As their ship descended, lightning flashed around them and wind battered their hull. The Carthax ship still patrolled the upper atmosphere, searching for survivors. The humans knew they had to move fast. When they landed near the glowing dome that sent the last SOS signal, the ground cracked beneath their feet. Every step echoed in the silence of a world that had once been full of life. The Varelians came out slowly, their translucent bodies trembling in fear. To them, the humans looked terrifying. Tall figures covered in metal suits with strange black visors and heavy weapons strapped to their backs. Their movements were sharp and strong, nothing like the soft and graceful ways of Varelian people. When one of the aliens saw a human soldier holding a rifle, he screamed and fell to his knees. The others followed, believing death had come. Dr. Carter removed her helmet to show her face. She smiled, though her eyes were full of sadness. "We're not here to hurt you," she said softly. "We came because you asked for help." The translator device repeated her words in the musical tones of the Varelian language. For a moment, no one moved. Then slowly, an elderly Varelian stepped forward. His light was dim, his voice shaking. "You answered." The humans nodded. That single word, answered, spread through the crowd like fire. The Varelians began to weep and reach out their delicate hands, touching the humans' armor as if to make sure they were real. It was the first time they had felt hope in many months. But even as they rejoiced, a deep rumble echoed across the horizon. The ground shook. In the distance, black smoke rose into the sky. The Carthax had detected the human ship. Captain Reyes gave quick orders. "Defensive perimeter! Protect the civilians!" The soldiers moved like lightning, setting up barriers and energy shields. The humans were not used to running. They were used to fighting. When the first Carthax ships appeared, dark and sharp like blades, they opened fire immediately. The Varelians screamed and ran back into the tunnels. Dr. Carter watched in shock as explosions lit up the sky. The noise was deafening, but the humans stood firm. The Carthax were powerful, but they had never faced anything like humanity before. Humans came from a world full of danger. Every storm, every disease, every predator had shaped them into survivors. Their bodies were strong, their reflexes sharp, their instincts ancient. On Earth, they had learned to fight to live. Out here in the cold stars, those same instincts made them terrifying. The first wave of enemy ships fired plasma bolts that turned sand into glass. Human pilots responded with precision missiles that cut through the air like fireflies. When the Carthax soldiers landed, towering and armored, human ground troops met them head-on. It was chaos. Metal clashing, smoke rising, screams and thunder mixing into one violent song. Yet through the chaos, the humans worked together like one living machine. Dr. Carter ran between cover, helping the wounded Varelians and scanning fallen enemies for biological data. She could hardly believe what she saw. These alien invaders were built for war, but they were losing. "They're retreating," shouted a soldier over the radio. "They can't handle our resistance." Within an hour, the Carthax ground forces fell back. The humans had held their position. For the first time in their lives, the Varelians saw their enemies flee. Some cried, some bowed before the humans, calling them Deathworlders after hearing stories from the galaxy about Earth. The term had spread long before humanity ever traveled the stars. Other species had observed Earth and labeled it a death world, a planet so dangerous that only monsters could survive there. Its oceans were full of predators, its skies full of storms, its lands crawling with diseases, poisons, and endless competition. For the Varelians, who came from a gentle world, humans were both saviors and nightmares. That night, as fires burned across the battlefield, the survivors gathered under the glowing dome. The air was still thick with smoke. Captain Reyes and Dr. Carter met with Siral, the elder Varelian who had sent the original SOS signal. His light flickered weakly as he spoke. "We did not know what kind of beings would hear us," he said. "Now that we have seen you, we are both grateful and afraid." Dr. Carter smiled sadly. "You're not wrong to be afraid. We are not peaceful by nature, but we came to protect you, not to conquer." Siral looked into her eyes. "You fight like storms," he said quietly. "The Carthax destroyed us with fear. You destroy fear itself." Over the next few days, humanity built a base on the planet. The engineers repaired damaged energy shields and dug trenches for defense. Medical teams treated both humans and Varelians side by side. Children peeked from behind walls to watch the strange new visitors. They had never seen creatures with such solid forms or heard voices so deep. One child touched the rough surface of a soldier's glove and laughed. For a brief moment, even in a world of ashes, there was life again. But the danger wasn't over. From orbit, long-range sensors picked up massive Carthax reinforcements approaching. The next battle would be larger and deadlier. Captain Reyes gathered the crew and said, "We can't just defend. We have to strike first. If we wait, they'll crush what's left of this planet." The plan was risky. Take the fight to the Carthax fleet before they reached the ground. Humanity had come too far to fail now. The Horizon Ark's engines roared to life again. Fighters launched from its hangars, streaking into the upper atmosphere. The humans flew into the heart of the storm, where enemy ships glowed red in the darkness. The battle in space was unlike anything humanity had ever faced. Plasma bursts tore across the void, leaving trails of light. Human ships dodged, rolled, and countered with weapons designed for maximum impact. The Carthax, though more advanced, were unprepared for human unpredictability. Back on the surface, the Varelians watched the sky explode with colors of war. They prayed silently, their hands glowing faintly. When one of the Carthax ships fell burning through the clouds, they gasped in awe. To them, it was like seeing gods fight among the stars. Hours passed before the transmissions came through. Enemy flagship destroyed. Remaining forces retreating. The humans had won again. When the Horizon Ark returned to orbit, cheers erupted across both species. The surviving Varelians came out of their shelters, waving banners of light to thank their protectors. The humans, tired and wounded, smiled through the exhaustion. But victory brought more than relief. It brought realization. The Varelians now understood what kind of beings they had called for help. The humans were not just brave. They were forged by danger, molded by pain, and fueled by compassion. They didn't fight for glory or power. They fought because someone was suffering and they couldn't stand aside. Yet their way of saving the world was filled with fire and destruction. To save life, they destroyed everything that threatened it. As the night settled again, Dr. Carter walked among the ruins, looking up at the stars. "We've shown them who we are," she said quietly to Captain Reyes. "Do you think they'll ever forgive us for it?" Reyes looked at the horizon, where the last of the fires still burned. "Maybe not," he replied, "but they'll remember." and remembering might be enough. The next morning, the Varelians held a small ceremony for their fallen. The humans joined them, standing silently as glowing crystals were placed into the earth. Cyril turned to Dr. Carter and said, "Your people are dangerous, but your hearts are kind. You came from a world of death, and yet you bring life to others. Perhaps that is your true gift." Dr. Carter didn't answer. She simply watched the rising sun paint the broken landscape with light. Humanity had come across the stars to save another species, but in doing so, they had revealed something deeper, their own nature. They were both destroyers and protectors, creatures of war and compassion. The galaxy would never forget the day the Deathworlders arrived, because that day, fear itself had met its match. And while the Varelians rebuilt their cities under the protection of their fierce allies, somewhere out in the darkness the Carthax plotted their revenge. The universe had learned a new truth. Humanity was not a race to be pitied or ignored. They were survivors of the harshest world known, and now they walked among the stars. The battle for Virelia had ended, but peace had not yet come. The planet was broken, its skies filled with ash, its land burned and cracked. The Carthax had been pushed back, but everyone knew they would return. They always did. Their fleet spread across the galaxy like a disease, destroying everything they touched. The Varelians were weak, too fragile to fight again, and they looked to the humans with both hope and fear. The humans began building a strong defense around the planet. The Horizon Arc stayed in orbit, acting as both shield and command base. On the ground, soldiers and engineers worked day and night, setting up energy barriers, repairing damaged buildings, and creating shelters for the survivors. The humans moved with discipline, every motion sharp and purposeful. The Varelians watched them with wide eyes, still trying to understand how such fierce creatures could also be so gentle. Dr. Carter spent her days with the Varelian scientists, learning about their culture and their history. Their technology was advanced but peaceful. They used energy to heal, to grow, to create beauty. She admired their kindness, but she also saw the reason for their downfall. They had never prepared for violence. "You built a perfect world," she said softly to Saral one evening as they looked over the ruined city. "But you forgot that not everyone wants peace." Saral lowered his glowing head. "We thought peace could be shared," he whispered. "Now we see that peace must be protected." Captain Reyes was focused on strategy. He knew the Carthax fleet would regroup and strike again soon. He gathered his officers in the command tent, the air thick with tension. "We can't just wait for them," he said firmly. "They'll come back stronger. We need to hit them first, destroy their command ship before it reaches orbit." His words shocked the Varelians who were present. They could not imagine attacking anyone, even their enemies. Dr. Carter hesitated. "If we strike first, they'll see us as aggressors." Reyes looked at her with tired eyes. "They already do. But this is survival. Not just for us, for them too." The next few days were filled with preparation. Human pilots trained in simulation pods, running battle drills again and again. Mechanics loaded new missiles and repaired damaged fighters. Soldiers checked their weapons and armor. The Varelians tried to help in small ways, providing healing energy, repairing broken machines. But they were still afraid of the coming storm. Children clung to their parents, asking if the humans would win again. No one had an answer. The night before the battle, the crew gathered in the mess hall of the Horizon Arc. There was little laughter, only quiet determination. Dr. Carter stood by the window, staring at the stars. "We're fighting for people we just met," she said softly. "Why does it feel like we've known them forever?" Reyes smiled faintly. "Because they remind us of what we used to be, before war taught us how to survive." The next morning, alarms echoed through the ship. Scanners detected movement, an enormous Carthax fleet approaching from deep space. Dozens of warships, each one larger than a city, filled the radar screen. The humans knew this would be the hardest fight of their lives. Reyes gave the order. "All stations ready. Launch squadrons." For Virelia. The Horizon Arc's engines roared as it lifted above the planet. Fighters shot out of its hangars, blazing trails of light behind them. From the ground, the Varelians watched the sky fill with color and thunder. They prayed silently, sending waves of energy upward like soft music, hoping it would somehow reach their human allies. When the two fleets met, the universe exploded with fire. The Carthax opened with a barrage of plasma beams that tore through space like lightning. Human ships dodged and countered with precision missiles and railguns. The battle was chaos, Flashes of light, bursts of sound, and the endless black of space swallowing everything around them. But through it all, the humans kept fighting. Inside the command deck, Captain Reyes barked orders.
Target their flagship! Focus fire!
Dr. Carter monitored the sensors, watching as each explosion painted the darkness with orange and blue light. Her heart pounded. Every time a human ship was hit, she felt it like a wound. The Carthax fleet tried to surround the Horizon Arc, but humanity's unpredictability became their greatest weapon. Human pilots didn't follow logic, they followed instinct. They took risks no machine would take. They flew straight through plasma storms using debris as cover, turning what looked like chaos into strategy. To the Varelians watching from below, it was as if the humans danced with death itself. After hours of fighting, the tide began to turn. A team of human pilots, led by Lieutenant Vega, managed to break through the enemy's defenses. They dove straight toward the Carthax command ship, a monstrous black vessel surrounded by energy shields. Vega's squadron flew faster than anyone thought possible, weaving through enemy fire. "If we take out their leader, we end this," she said through the comms.
For Earth and for Varelia.
The attack was brutal. 3 fighters were destroyed instantly, but Vega didn't stop. She fired her last torpedo directly into the ship's power core. A second later, the enemy flagship erupted in a blinding explosion that shook the stars themselves. The shockwave sent debris flying in every direction. The Carthax formation broke apart. One by one, their ships turned and fled into the darkness. On the ground, the Varelians looked up as the black dots in the sky disappeared. For a moment, there was silence. Then cheers erupted. The humans had done it again. They had saved an entire world. When the Horizon Arc returned to orbit, the crew was exhausted but alive. Many were injured, and some ships never made it back. Still, the mission was a success. Humanity had proven its strength not just to the Carthax but to the galaxy itself. The Deathworlders, as others called them, had shown that their power came not only from their weapons but from their unbreakable spirit. That night, a ceremony was held in the rebuilt Varelian capital. The survivors lit glowing lanterns that floated into the air, rising slowly until they looked like stars. Humans and Varelians stood together under the open sky for the first time in months. Music filled the air. A soft, haunting melody played on crystal instruments. Dr. Carter translated the words of the song. "For every world that falls, another shall rise. For every cry in the dark, a voice will answer." Captain Reyes gave a short speech. "We came here because we heard your call," he said. "But in saving you, you also saved us. You reminded us that strength means nothing without compassion." Saral, the Varelian elder, stepped forward and placed a small, glowing crystal in his hand. "This is the heart of Varelia," he said. "It holds the light of our people. Keep it, so you remember that even in darkness, hope shines brightest." Reyes accepted it with a bow. "We'll protect it," he promised. As the celebration continued, some Varelians approached the humans with cautious smiles. Children touched their hands, curious about the warmth of human skin. Others offered food made from glowing fruits. For the first time, laughter filled the air again. The humans didn't feel like strangers anymore, they felt like family. But in the quiet corners of the night, Dr. Carter couldn't rest. She looked at the stars and thought about what would come next. The Carthax were wounded, not destroyed, and somewhere beyond the horizon, other species were watching. They had seen what humanity could do, how easily they turned fear into fire, despair into victory. Some would see them as heroes, others would see them as threats. Back on the Horizon Arc, reports from the galaxy began to arrive. Alien communications networks buzzed with talk of Earth's warriors. "The Deathworlders have awakened," one message said. "Pray they never come for you." Humanity's name spread like a legend, half warning, half promise. Dr. Carter didn't know how to feel. She had wanted to bring peace, but peace had come through destruction. She remembered Saral's words, "You destroy fear itself." Maybe that was true. Maybe humanity's strength was not a curse, but a gift, the ability to face what others could not. As dawn broke over Varelia, the sun cast golden light over the ruins and new flowers began to grow among the ashes. The humans stood beside the Varelians, watching the light rise. "We did it," said one soldier quietly. Dr. Carter nodded. "Yes," she replied, "but this is just the beginning. The universe knows we're here now, and nothing will ever be the same." In that peaceful morning, for the first time in centuries, Varelia felt alive again. The song of life returned to the air, carried by the wind, reaching up into the sky where the horizon arc floated like a guardian star. Humanity had come as strangers, fought as warriors, and stayed as protectors. The galaxy would remember that day, not as the day humans arrived, but as the day the universe learned what it truly meant to fight for hope. Months had passed since the great battle over Viralia. The planet had begun to heal, its skies slowly clearing, its lands turning green again under the watch of both humans and Virelians. What was once a battlefield was now a place of rebuilding. Towers of light rose from the ground, blending human steel with Virelian crystal. It was a symbol of unity between two species that, only a short time ago, had been strangers. The horizon arc remained in orbit, its hull now a home for hundreds of humans who had chosen to stay and help rebuild. Captain Reyes and Dr. Carter had become leaders not just for the human crew, but for the entire alliance. Together with Soral and the Virelian Council, they worked to form a plan for the future, a plan to defend more than just one planet. The message was clear. Humanity's fight on Viralia was only the beginning. Every day reports came in from deep space. Other worlds had started sending messages, pleas for help, warnings, or cautious greetings. Some were afraid of humans, calling them the monsters who defeated the monsters. Others called them saviors, but none could ignore them anymore. Humanity had announced its arrival to the galaxy with fire and courage, and now the universe was watching. Dr. Carter walked through the Virelian capital one morning, looking at the reconstruction efforts. She smiled as she saw human engineers teaching Virelian youths how to operate heavy machines, while the Virelians shared their energy-based healing methods in return. For the first time, cooperation seemed natural. Yet deep inside she couldn't shake a growing worry. Humanity's power was being noticed, and not all attention was friendly. In the command center, Captain Reyes stood before a glowing map of nearby star systems. Red dots blinked where distress calls had been detected. The Carthax are retreating, he said, but they're regrouping in another sector. And now other species are preparing for war. Some to defend themselves, others to challenge us. Soral floated closer, his body pulsing with soft blue light. They fear what they do not understand, he said. They fear you. Reyes gave a small, tired smile. They should, he replied quietly. But they should also know we don't fight for conquest. We fight to protect. That night, a meeting was held inside the Great Crystal Hall, a new council that included humans, Virelians, and representatives from 2 other nearby civilizations who had come seeking alliance. The hall glowed with a soft golden light, reflecting in the calm faces of those gathered. It was the first interspecies summit in known galactic history. Dr. Carter stood to speak. When the Virelians called for help, we didn't know who they were. We came because they needed us. That's what humanity does. We explore, we survive, and we protect. But we can't stand alone. The galaxy must unite if we want peace. A tall alien with scales of silver spoke next. His voice was sharp but steady. And if peace fails, will the humans bring their fire again? Reyes leaned forward. If peace fails, he said, then we'll defend it. That's our promise. There was silence in the hall for a moment. Then Soral rose and placed a glowing hand on Reyes's shoulder. Then let this be the dawn of the alliance, he said. An oath between worlds to protect one another, to fight darkness together. The words were simple but powerful. Each delegate agreed one by one. A new era began that day, born from the ashes of fear and war. The Galactic Alliance was formed, with humanity and Viralia at its heart. Weeks later, ships from Earth began to arrive, new fleets carrying supplies, scientists, and diplomats. They brought seeds, medicine, and knowledge, but they also brought warnings. On Earth, people had mixed feelings. Some feared that involving themselves with alien wars would bring destruction home. Others believed it was humanity's destiny to lead among the stars. Dr. Carter watched the first Earth cargo ship land. She felt a strange mix of pride and unease. Humanity had once looked up at the stars and wondered if anyone was out there. Now they were part of something vast and unpredictable. The galaxy was full of life, but also full of danger. Meanwhile, deep in the void of space, something stirred. Far beyond the reach of any known system, the remnants of the Carthax fleet regrouped around a massive station. Their leader, a towering being with dark armor and glowing red eyes, watched recordings of the battle on Viralia. He saw human ships moving like predators, striking with ruthless precision. "Deathworlders," he growled. So the stories were true. They will not stop until the stars themselves burn. He turned to his commanders. Let them think they've won. The next war will not be fought on their terms. The Carthax began rebuilding faster and stronger, creating new weapons, designed specifically to counter human tactics. The seeds of another war were already taking root. Back on Varelia, the humans didn't know this yet. They were too busy creating hope. The once ruined city now shone brighter than before. Energy towers pulsed with life and gardens grew in places where craters had been. Every night, people gathered in the great plaza to sing the Song of Dawn, a Varelian tradition that now included human voices. Reyes often stood at the edge of the city, looking at the horizon. "You ever think about home?" Dr. Carter asked him one evening. "Every day," he said. "But I think this is home now, too." She smiled softly. "Maybe that's what humanity does. We make every place we go a little more human." He chuckled. "Let's just hope the galaxy agrees." Soon the first joint human Varelian fleet was formed. They named it the Shield of Dawn. Its mission was to protect weaker worlds from the Carthax and any other threat that rose in the shadows. Pilots from both species trained together, learning each other's styles. Humans taught combat and survival. Varelians taught focus and harmony. It wasn't always easy. Sometimes tempers clashed and misunderstandings led to arguments, but over time they became something new, something stronger. Dr. Carter often wrote reports back to Earth describing the progress. In one of her letters she wrote, "The galaxy calls us Deathworlders, but maybe they're wrong. We're not creatures of death. We are creatures of endurance. We survive everything, not because we love war, but because we love life too much to lose it." Her words spread across the stars, quoted in transmissions, shared in speeches. The name Deathworlders began to change meaning. To some it no longer meant destroyers, it meant defenders. Guardians who stood between chaos and peace. Still, Dr. Carter knew peace was fragile. One night she walked alone to the top of the crystal spire and looked up at the stars. The vastness made her feel both small and powerful at once. She whispered to herself, "They sent an SOS because they were afraid, and we answered because we refused to be afraid." In that moment she realized the truth about humanity's role in the galaxy. They were not conquerors, not invaders, not saviors even. They were survivors who shared their strength so others could survive too. Months turned into a year. The alliance grew. Trade routes opened. New friendships formed between species that had once lived in isolation. And yet, beyond the edge of known space, darkness still lingered. Dr. Carter knew another storm was coming. But this time, the galaxy wouldn't face it alone. One evening, the Horizon Arc prepared to leave orbit for a new mission. Its engines glowed with blue light reflecting off the Varelian seas below. Thousands gathered to watch it rise. Cyril stood among them, his voice filled with emotion. "They came from a world of storms," he said, "and brought their fire to our sky. They showed us that fear can be defeated, not by hiding, but by standing together." As the ship lifted into the stars, children waved and cheered. The humans aboard watched the glowing planet grow smaller beneath them, knowing their journey was far from over. Captain Reyes stood on the bridge, gazing out at the endless dark ahead. "Set a course for the outer rim," he ordered. "There are other calls out there waiting." Dr. Carter smiled beside him. "And we'll answer them all." The Horizon Arc disappeared into the void, its light fading slowly until it became just another star among billions. But its legend was only beginning. Throughout the galaxy, stories spread of the humans who came when hope was lost, the Deathworlders who brought not destruction, but salvation. They were feared, respected and admired in equal measure. For some, they were a warning. For others, a promise. And somewhere, far beyond the edge of known space, a new distress signal began to echo through the dark. It was faint but clear, a cry for help, and once again the Deathworlders would answer.